So one of the themes of this conference is, what is the future of geoscience and geoscientists in this energy transition? I guess at the bottom line is, do we need geologists in this kind of future world as we move from a kind of high fossil carbon world, where geologists have been very effective, into this low carbon or zero carbon world of the future? And like many of the people in the room, I think, yes, there is going to be a future of geologists. But what is that future actually going to look like? I mean, on one hand, you think, well, it's obvious because geologists are the people who study the planet. And we have this long-term perspective going back 4.5 billion years. We understand the planet's rhythms and its sensitivities over these kind of timescales. But I think that it's easy to overplay that, I think, because we know that if you go into the geological record, a thin layer, a thin lamination of mud might be 100,000 years. The record, the length of modern humans on the planet. So the resolution that geologists are used to is a completely different resolution to the one that we've faced with today, with this rapidity of change and trying to separate out anthropogenic and natural. So we have this dilemma to really think about what it is that geologists contribute. I think one of the kind of contexts, one of the frames for this is that on the one hand, we see geologists as the stewards of the planet. In other words, as I say, we understand how the planet behaves over these timescales. We've seen times of great climate change and environmental change in the past. So kind of, if you're worried about the planet, trust the geologist. We've got that stewardship in mind. And yet, how does that play with the flip side, which is the geologist as the exploiter, a very efficient and effective exploiter of the planet? We go out and we find the stuff that drives the modern world, that people seem to be not wanting any less of. And so we're kind of stuck between these end members of being the Earth steward and the Earth exploiter. And I'm not sure how we play that. The reality, I suspect, is that we sit in this continuum in the middle, and that each person decides where they are in that place. So I think that actually a lot of the things that we're going to be contributing are not so much in terms of the technical side, but in the way that we think. So for example, some of the things that distinguish geologists from other types of sciences, the collection is, well, one is we deal with a very complex, holistic system, the Earth and its environment, its atmosphere, oceans, ice. And so we're very aware about how changes in one part can motivate themselves into changes in the other part. I think the other thing is that alongside that systems thinking is that we're very interdisciplinary. That doesn't just mean a geochemist working with a geophysicist. We integrate all the time. We're kind of a central hub. I think some of the other things is the way we think, where we conceptualize the world is very different. Most geologists feel this familiarity with what's down there. I don't mean the ground floor, I mean the subsurface. That's a world that's completely alien to normal people. But for geologists, that is our world. And the future will see that subsurface, that hidden commons, as being both a resource and also a waste environment. So it seems to me that for a whole bunch of reasons, we are going to be needed. But there's absolutely no doubt, and this conference has really brought out a number of things where the nature of what's required is changing. So we can see, for example, things like digitalization coming through, such that we know that part of the energy world, the energy industry in the future is going to be about data science, data analytics, data visualization, information science. And is that something that we already teach in conventional geology or science courses? I think not. So I think one of the things is the dilemma that we have is, okay, if we kind of see it going in that direction, do we need to change our teaching and training at the other end? Do we need to start retraining geologists as big Earth data scientists, able to crunch large amounts of numbers, to use very sophisticated statistical analytical packages, to be this person that can interrogate the Earth at this very numeric quantitative level? Because that's going to require a kind of real regime change in the way that we look at this. And I think that there's no doubt that interaction is going to come, that geologists are going to be needed to interact with machine learning people and artificial intelligence and data visualization people. But it strikes me that one of the issues that we got to kind of discuss is, if we're going to bring that in, what do we drop out? So which part of traditional geoscience education goes. Is it going to be, do we want the same level of understanding of rock chemistries and rock physics and things like that? What about fieldwork? Do we get rid of fieldwork? Maybe AR and VR is this new world that's going to replace fieldwork. That is quite scary for us in the geoscience academic world because, many of us don't know anything about this new thing. We know how to go and hit rocks. But I think the answer is probably that we need a balance. We need to have scientists coming through our ranks that are comfortable with big data, even if that big data is geological data. We probably deal with big data all the time. We just don't call it big data. So we're going to have students who are very comfortable engaging and being able to talk to people from maths and computing about these kind of big data. But I think the challenge is broader than that. If geology is going to make a truly transformative effect in many of the big issues that we've got, and what I mean by that is we now have global frameworks for roadmaps, if you like, for what the planet needs. And those are, for example, the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which has got a roadmap for climate mitigation and adaptation. And also the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are measures and metrics of what we need to reach over poverty and hunger and these big societal concerns. If we feel that geoscience or science has got a role to play in that, then we need to change the way we do business. In the past, geoscience hasn't really contributed very much in this area of sustainable development. It's kind of seen as economics or geography or something else. But I think because we study the planet's our thing, and these are societal concerns with the planet, that relationship, it seems to me pretty critical that we have a big role to play. And I think in that sense, there's an interesting set of skill sets that we don't talk about much. And that is the skill sets around transformative science. What I mean by that is, if we're going to reach new types of climate environments, new types of energy environments, new types of social contracts, then we need to be much broader in what we're doing. I don't mean a geologist talking to a physicist or a geologist talking to a biologist. I mean a geologist talking to people in the social sciences, into psychology and anthropology, talking to people in the communication and creative arts, because we need a much broader way to think about how to understand the public and what they need to know about our world. So that means that the geoscientists of the 21st century, I think, is going to have to be, interdisciplinary in a far broader way than we are at the moment. We're going to need to be participatory. We need to recognize that there's different kind of knowledges out there that we need to take account of. For example, lay knowledge, public knowledge. When we go into communities to talk to them about oil and gas developments, we need to know about what they know and what their feelings are about that. We need to be a kind of reflexive. And what I mean by that is we need to actually think about what our role actually is in this world. And part of that is around things that are pretty crucial to the way that society accepts change. Trust, transparency, and ethical aspects. I mean, many of the big changes that are afoot, that are coming through in the environmental world, aren't technical questions. There are technical questions there. CCS, huge technical questions. We've never done it before, really, at scale. Nuclear waste disposal is coming along. Many of the energies, fracking, for example, in Europe, huge uncertainties about it. So there are technical uncertainties. But they're the easy bit. It's the societal uncertainties. So one of the things about the ethical is that many of the choices we're going to have are ethical, moral, aesthetic choices. We need to be bringing that into the training of being a scientist, to think about that. What is our sense of purpose as an individual and as an organization? So I think that as we look to the future, this sense of a geoscientist being part of a transformative science, a scientist that can look in a whole bunch of different ways, is going to come increasingly to the fore. So one of the ways that I can try and illustrate that is the notion that it's very obvious that oil and gas companies, because they have a role to play in climate change through energy, which is one of the big drivers of the climate change. One of the big drivers there is that oil and gas companies are going to increasingly become energy companies. So that means that in the past, where a geologist would join an oil and gas company and basically work on kind of fossil fuel type things, well, they might spend 6 months or a year in the offshore wind division, And then we pass it on to the solar division. What is the skill set that geoscientists are going to bring to that area? And it might not be technical. It might be that actually one of the things that geologists are good at is making decisions with incomplete data. You know, we get a rock over there, we get a rock there, and a geologist will draw something in between, because we're not used to having a full data set. So rather than go off and find more and more data, it's trying to make meaningful communication of the data we've got. There's going to be no shortage of data in the 21st century, but there might be a shortage of meaningful data that actually can be useful. So I think part of this then will be, say, oil and gas become this energy world, and even then we're already seeing that energy world transforming into something else, which is the resource world. So an example is we're involved in southwest England, Cornwall, with a deep geothermal drilling project. And that deep geothermal drilling project is run by an oil and gas consultancy. It's using drilling technology with Halliburton that is conventionally for oil and gas. It is monitored by a seismic network, so it's kind of very traditional. But although the main thing is about heat and power from geothermal fluids, those fluids have also got interested in minerals, so lithium in particular. So what we could be seeing in the future is the oil and gas and the kind of minerals industry starting to intermingle and morph. So the promise, the excitement, the optimism is around a new kind of energy stroke resources landscape, of which the geologists will have to be part of. And I think that's the sense of excitement that I tell people. When, you know, at the moment it's quite a struggle to get new students into geology interested. You know, they're coming in from dinosaurs and volcanoes and plate tectonics. It's kind of more and more difficult to get them interested in oil and gas. Oil and gas is seen as the bad boy, the enemy of all of these things. But oil and gas has this fundamental contribution to make to sustainable development. So getting that narrative across means that I think that you're entering an industry now at one of the most exciting, transformative bits in human history. And trying to communicate that across means that if we can capture that, then there's going to be no shortage of people that want to come into geoscience. But what the geoscientist actually is, what we train them in, is still open for discussion. And that's really what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So good luck with those discussions.